Hey there, folks, and welcome back into the Northern Futbol Podcast. Ben Steiner alongside Brendan Dunlop and Alex Gongi-Ruzik. And it doesn't feel like it was that long ago that we were in Miami. And it wasn't that long ago, but it also feels like a long time ago because time is just very warped for me right now. And I imagine it is for you too as well.
Well, dude, we were never in Miami.
Yeah, I
We
was
were
gonna
in
say.
Fort Lauderdale, which is not Miami.
You
Lauderdale
were in
by the
Miami.
Sea, to be more specific.
Yeah, it was South Florida is what I keep saying. And in my writing, I feel like I keep going back between the Chase Stadium in Capitals and South Florida just to avoid repeatedly saying Fort Lauderdale. But interesting part of the world, isn't it? Interesting part of the world, and it was really, really special to get to witness that with you guys and to see that result, man. I mean, the result was incredible. For that club, for Canadian soccer, considering where things are right now with the game in this country, broadcast in this country, where this club was a few months ago, being put up for sale. It's amazing. It really felt like a great people story, not just a great soccer story, and that's what made it so special to be there.
I'm happy you've dove in right into the stuff that matters. I was going to say some joke about how we didn't see any alligators, although we did see some.
I mean, you could do that. You can do that.
No.
I don't want to get straight into the sicko stuff. Please don't go into the back line and, did Jesper make the right subs right away? Because I would like to talk about how different it was to live with you guys as opposed to just do the podcast. And, we showed up at the hotel in Vancouver together, but to actually live with you guys and see you guys wake up at 8:30, as you said, and then go out for a 10K run. It took me an hour to make it to the Dunkin' Donuts, which was a quarter of a mile walk away. And yet you guys come back at 10K fresh or 11 and change or whatever. I'm not eating that fake stuff. Let's go to the grocery store and get Whole Foods. You guys set the bar pretty high. I used to think that, you guys were learning from me. The tables have turned.
Yeah, the night before we indulged in some other fun stuff. So
11K for Alex, though, 1 kilometer every week for every CPL goal scored. So I've committed to not doing that for MLS games. Maybe I'll do that for an MLS game or MLS match day this weekend because I am running a marathon on Sunday and there's usually about 40 goals scored on an MLS weekend. But it was a very interesting place that we were staying at. Had a window between the living room and the bedroom without glass, which was very odd, I thought. And as per NFP,
it was for the air conditioning and airflow.
Well.
Must have been for air conditioning and airflow.
Must have been. That'll be the excuse for us.
No reason otherwise to have someone look into the bedroom, right? But whole other story.
Very bizarre.
Great pool though, and it wasn't a bad spot. Got the job done, and it had solid Wi-Fi, which I think we were all very grateful about.
We're all sun-kissed. I wore a bright blue shirt, not just for, maybe it's a little faded now, but not just for the Whitecaps, but also to make my skin pop, because in this Toronto winter, I feel like I've had a pretty bad glow the last few times for those watching NFP on YouTube.
I think you both came out a little bit better than me because my entire upper body is completely fried in a sunburn, which is not the most comfortable, but we'll move on and get through it.
The Levin curse, Steiner. You knew what you were walking into when you took that shirt off.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but we'll get through it. Only soft fabrics for now, like this vintage Whitecaps kit that I got a little while ago. But I had to pull it out for this show. Of course, focusing on the Whitecaps in this one, a 3-1 win in the second leg. Jordi Alba opens the scoring. There were some nerves there for the Whitecap supporters, nearly 300 making their way down on a club organized charter, getting to the stadium. Great work from the club to be able to pull that together. They took up an entire section at Chase Stadium, which was quite the sight to see. And second half starts, and very quickly the Whitecaps turned this match around and put the tie to sleep. 2 goals very quickly from Sebastian Berhalter, or Brian White and Pedro Vite. Sebastian Berhalter adds another a bit later on. And the players were dancing long into the night in the parking lot and onto the buses, and I imagine onto their plane as well. And it was quite rowdy on the supporters and media plane as well, but then it quieted down with a 12:45 a.m. departure, which certainly threw time into a bit of a warp. But Brendan, your thoughts on the experience at Chase Stadium, temporary stadium, and that Whitecaps performance?
Look, a dynamic midfielder whose offensive capabilities seem to have no bounds dominated the tie. It wasn't Miami's number 10. it was Sebastian Berhalter, which was incredible because he had his foot in all 5 goals in this tie against Miami. So if you were running a mile for every goal that Vancouver ran in this tie, I don't think you would have expected to be running 5. But to me, that's what's most impressive. We had said before, and there was if you watched our pre-match bit on Twitter on Blue Sky that we'd done from the stadium corner there. Luckily, we didn't get blown away and it didn't fall over. Nice little Lego stadium now that they've got temporarily out there in Fort Lauderdale, not Miami. I thought that Miami was going to come out guns blazing, and I thought that they were going to score 2 goals early. And to be fair, they almost did have 2. Vancouver were unlucky not to have had a first half equalizer as well, but to score in the 9th minute, Miami looked comfortable. I thought that the fact that it wasn't so hot played to Miami's favor because I did very much think that it was going to be the fitness that saw Vancouver through. And I was worried that they may not have the resilience because, look, Vancouver teams of the past didn't. If they were to have gone down 2-0 on 18 minutes, as I predicted, or 2-0 in 10 minutes, which was also possible last night as well, I had worried that they wouldn't be able to respond. They didn't look phased at all. They played their game. They looked comfortable. They really, didn't let Miami get under their skin, although they tried. It got very Concacaf-y, and credit to Ali Ahmed and Tate Johnson. They stood their ground, but they didn't cross a line. Same with Eddie Ocampo. Seemed close at times, but they kept it together. Same referee that had Canada-Mexico. So I think that there'll be some fans that were a little worried that he might be too card happy. It is heartbreaking for Sebastian Berhalter to pick up an extra yellow card. And on accumulation, he won't be in the final. But honestly, the way they responded from top to bottom, Alex, it was better than I think anyone could have imagined.
I'm happy you mentioned the offense because I think that's a big story. 5 goals against Miami across both legs. They've scored in every Champions Cup game they've played this year. So that's been a huge plus. They've only been kept off the board twice, right? That's been St. Louis away and Toronto FC away, which Ben was in the house for. But this team can score, and the fact that it's been without Ryan Gauld, great. For me, it's the defense. The defense is remarkable because at times that's been a weakness of the team over the last few years, and they just continue to be so dominant this year. The underlying numbers show it. The actual numbers show it. They've conceded 7 in 10 MLS games, and I think it's 9 in 8 CCC games against top opposition. You look at this Miami tie, just 1 goal conceded. And you look deeper, they conceded around 2 XG across 180 minutes, and about 0.7 to 1 of that was in the last 45 minutes when they were up by 3 goals, and Miami just kind of threw everything at them to kind of give their fans a good feeling going home, maybe to give Lionel Messi a goal. And even that wasn't enough to break the Whitecaps defense. And I think that's huge because for as good as they've been on the ball offensively, and that's really helped fuel this start, at the end of the day, you don't go far in tournaments like this if you're porous defensively. You don't, especially when you're playing teams like Monterrey, Pumas, Miami, whoever they'll face in the final now. It's constantly said, and that goes as well for other competitions, Supporters Shield, MLS Cup, which we can't forget the Whitecaps have their eyes on, and also the Canadian Championship. They won't want to give away that trophy for free either. So I'm just continue to be really impressed by the defense, and I think that's been an underrated story. Of course, I think a lot of their defense comes from their attack, and Tristan Blackman and some other guys had some really interesting quotes on what that looks like. And I think that's something that Sorensen has maybe not gotten enough credit for just because they've been so fun to watch.
Yeah, when you compare this Whitecaps defense to years past, or even what Miami had been rolling out over the last few games, it's a very settled backline. You have that partnership of Ranko Veselinovic and Tristan Blackman right in the middle. They play game in, game out with each other. You have Eddie Ocampo, who's really come into his own this season. And then at left back, Sam Matakubi goes down, and stepping up was Tate Johnson, or as they were saying in the press box last night, Tate Johnson on the press box commentary.
Tate Johnson. That's his new nickname all year, by the way, guys. I hope we know. Or anytime we say Tate Johnson, it's Tate Johnson.
Tate Johnson. My hit was my first Uber get in, and he goes Fort Lauderdale. I'm like, I'll never say it any different. That came from him not being able to say Brendan correctly, and he thought, I'm just going to lean into it. So Brenda is going to Fort Lauderdale. That was pretty good.
Yeah, but Tate Johnson stepping up and
say it correctly. Say it correctly.
Tate Johnson, Mr. Johnson, Senor Johnson, stepping up and being able to shut down Messi. very well over 3 halves. And then Sam Adekubi comes in and gets the tie done for the Whitecaps and definitely helps out attacking wise as well. But when you look at what the Whitecaps were able to achieve in this game, there was one change to the starting 11. That was Emmanuel Sabi. And it did prove a little bit problematic in that first half. You can look at the goal by Jordi Alba. Sabi was a little bit out of position. I know that was something that stood out to you, Alex.
Yeah, it was actually very fascinating to kind of reflect on the first 45 to 60 minutes because we kind of wondered heading into the game what the one change would be. We didn't expect any of the lineup to change except at right wing. I just didn't expect Daniel Rios to start. If anything, our question was Jaden Nelson or Emmanuel Sabi. Sorensen goes for Sabi. And yeah, Jordi Alba had an excellent first 30 minutes. It was very smart from Miami to kind of give him a bit more license to go forward. He was causing overlaps. And, Eddie Ocampo, for as good as he's been this year, there's still moments where he's learning, he's showing his age. He's still super young. And in the early goings, Miami exploited how aggressive he wanted to play. And Emmanuel Sabi on that side, I think they were kind of banking on the fact that Sabi would exploit Alba. And instead, it was the other way around. What I do love is the adjustment. I did wonder if Sabi was going to drop back and help, because on the other side, Ali Ahmed didn't have the greatest first half on the ball, but off the ball, he was fantastic. Him, even Tate Johnson or Tate Yonson was having a bit of a tough first half with the yellow card. Ali Ahmed did a great job of supporting him, helping him on a few occasions. Sabi wasn't doing the same. But what Sorensen did was he moved Pedro Vite over. In fact, Vite moved so far over that on the FUT after the game, it has it as a 4-4-2 with Vite on the right wing. And by doing that, it gave Ocampo the defensive support. All of a sudden, Alba started to get quiet. And I think what I realized is, okay, they really want to keep Sabi up the field. And in the second half, we saw why. As soon as that freedom started to set in, the Whitecaps tore Miami apart in transition. I think that really sums up the tie for me looking across it. Miami did a pretty good job with their plan A across both games. They dominated a lot of the ball. They got into some good areas. They did some good things that maybe in another way they get a bit unlucky and they score some more goals. But where the Whitecaps won this tie was their plan B, C, and D. Anytime they were forced to adjust, like in leg one, they played deeper and hit more on the counter, and they executed that. In leg two here, they suffered for 30 minutes. They changed up their defensive shape. They prospered in the second half. They changed up their attack slightly, and they prospered. And I think that's a huge credit to Jesper Sorensen and how he adjusted.
There was so much space between the midfield and that front line, particularly after they went up, and you thought, oh, like, are they gambling here? Are they playing with fire? And no, it didn't seem like that. I mean, Miami had a few chances. Vancouver also had some huge defensive blocks. Messi had a couple of free kicks in dangerous areas that he really didn't do anything with. Were easily collected by Takaoka, but he stung his fingers once. And they hit the post. Messi hit the post as well. So Miami were close to scoring more, but honestly, that scoreline in a lot of ways flatters Vancouver, and to me, that's what's so remarkable. It's the way that they responded to going down early, and then they got one, and at a time where if that was later, if that was the 81st minute, 87th minute, and they've got that one, and that's what I thought would happen. I thought it'd be 2-0 Miami for a long time, and they wouldn't be able to see off the game. Vancouver would get one late because they were more fit. They'd get them on the counter. I truly believe that's what happened. To get it at 51 and 53, and then just like be completely in the driver's seat and comfortable with whatever Miami was trying to do for a short period there was throw the kitchen sink, but they weren't phased at all. They were totally fine. So I really love the way that they adapted. And on the Sabi point, I thought of it this way, that maybe, and Alex, I'd love to hear what you think. Did Sorensen look at that and go, there's more tape of Jaden for them to study to try to exploit? But people don't really know what Sabi's got in the toolbox, and like Vancouver didn't really either to a full extent, I think. And to your point, they adjusted fine, and that was no longer an issue. But when I looked at that, that's what I thought the decision process might have been.
It's partnerships. I think that's what also something we've learned with Sorensen going way back to preseason. He likes certain combos, like Johnson and Ocampo works because one's dropping deeper and Ocampo flies forward. And I think what we've seen is Jaden Nelson, he goes a bit wider. And I think we just wouldn't see Nelson and Ocampo because they kind of would get in each other's way. That's, I think, why we saw Rios in leg one and Sabi in leg two. Sabi's a bit more of an inside forward, a striker. He kind of tucks in, and Sorensen has kind of liked that from whoever's playing with an overlapping fullback. We've seen that on the flip side when someone like Adekugbe's in, Ahmed all of a sudden tucks in a little more. Or we've even seen different combinations. So I think that's probably what played into Sorensen's idea. And I think that's why he made the adjustment of Vite going over to the right instead of Sabi, because I think in his head, he's thinking, all right, if you do that, at least in the attack, Ocampo still has the license to go forward, because he had a couple great moments going forward in the first half and was just kind of let down by his final ball. So I think that it's really interesting to see how Sorensen views some of those partnerships.
And I'll just talk about Sorensen's adjustments and mid-game tweaks as well. Question from Mike Bossy. When he was first hired, we heard that Sorensen's weakness was his in-game adjustments. With the Whitecaps, they might be his greatest strengths, and he clearly outcoached Javier Mascherano during this tie. What might he be doing differently with the Whitecaps than he did previously in his previous club jobs, where he had only coached in Denmark? He comes over here, and he's thriving already, Brennan.
You know what I might put it down to? And there's a piece on CanadianSoccerDaily.com. We had a Danish writer who covers Brøndby for a living kind of explain who is Jesper Sorensen. And what I found very interesting was things looked great at Brøndby, and he come in highly rated. They were contending for the title, I think, in the first season, and had a chance to win the title the last year that he was there. And they just kind of collapsed and fell apart. I think that's where that criticism comes from. When I had to sit down this week in Fort Lauderdale with Jesper Sorensen, and he spoke about, my general question was, how important is this tournament? And he says, look, this tournament's very underrated in general, but why this is so important for my players right now is they don't get this pressure in the league. You just don't get this in a 34 game regular season. There's too many games. He's not even able to think and try and process what it'll be like to prepare for the playoffs. He has this real cup competition happening right now, which used to stress out a lot of MLS coaches and derail a lot of MLS seasons. You think back to 2018, that Toronto FC put all their eggs in that basket after winning MLS Cup to win this tournament, and they came up short, and they had a horrendous season. They missed the playoffs. I'm sure they were lucky to bounce back in 2019. They made MLS Cup, but that was an absolute fluke. Like, putting all the eggs in the basket for this tournament really hurt TFC is one example. And you can go back to Montreal in years past where it's kind of been the same. For Vancouver to be MLS Supporters Shield leaders at the moment, flying, best team undeniably in MLS, and then to go out and beat the teams that they've done in this tournament, I think that the pressure that they've gone through, to his point, is why you haven't seen him. It's like he doesn't have the same pressure that he does in a league scenario as well. And there's a fearlessness to being new. There's a fearlessness to being young. We see this with players, and Tate Jonsson is a great example of this, right? I think that that's what he's on right now. The honeymoon phase for Jesper has been extended a lot longer than many other people get to enjoy because of those factors. So I genuinely think he's really, really happy with how it's worked out, that his big pressure moments have been this early in the season. They've come out on top, and it's almost as if he can kind of tinker and grow into the team as the season goes. Really, it's a very unique situation for a manager to be in.
Well, one big factor I think that's also lost in this is that Brøndby, he was with the club that was clear by far and away like the third biggest team in terms of just what was financially, right, in terms of the size.
Resources, they're huge,
resources, and that's in Europe. That makes a big difference. You have less subs, less factors that are available to other clubs, and we sometimes see that in those leagues. Whereas in MLS, with the parity, there's less of a disparity between teams. Even if for a Whitecaps, who are a small market team, smaller budget, so to speak, it's not like there's a huge gulf between them and Miami. In fact, thanks to smart spending, you would take the Whitecaps backline over Miami every day of the week. Yeah, the midfield went up against Miami and competed and made up for the fact that, okay, one team had Messi and Suarez and the other team didn't. But the roster one is a big factor. But yeah, Brendan, you had a point you want to hop in with?
No, I think this Miami is a bad comparison example, because you look at how front-loaded, how Miami Heat 2011 that they are. Like, I was talking to some reporters last night, a guy called Simon from the AP, who's from Burnley originally. So all of his criticism just sounded better because he's got that thick Burnley accent. And he was talking about how hilariously imbalanced this team is. And they're trying to sell it like it's a balanced team. It's a real contender. No, it's just incredibly front loaded. And it's these guys that are here making it look like a retirement league. And these results that Miami keep getting, being dumped in the first round, being knocked out of the cup to a team that clearly is so much more athletic and tactical, makes it, should make Miami feel nervous about hosting Al Ahly in the opening game of the Club World Cup. FIFA as well. Imagine if the Egyptian champions come and steamroll Messi and Miami 4-0 in a tournament that people already aren't buying. Like, that was one of the takeaways I wasn't expecting to leave Fort Lauderdale with.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
to your point, Sorensen, yes, definitely hard to compare. But just to wrap up that point, it's the depth. It's the depth, because I think, again, with Brøndby, you don't have the same resources, etc. The fact that the Whitecaps have such good depth, I think it helps a coach that he's able to look to the bench like, okay, my left back struggling, boom, Sam Adekugbe in. Like, that's an insane luxury, and it goes the other way. If Sam Adekugbe is in a situation where he's struggling at halftime, you can bring him in. You've seen it across the board that he's genuinely making he's having difference makers, and there's a lot of reasons for it. I think there is a certain element of him coming in has kind of given every player a fresh slate that we're seeing, as because they're competing and they're going for minutes, and it's a perfect storm because they have this competition. There's been injuries, he's been able to play everyone, but I think that's probably been the biggest factor.
Last season, Ben, it was white and gold. That was how you described them running, right? And we did a show, and I said, the problem is the best players have to be the best players. And people criticized me for that. I'm like, you can't have that every single time. Not only are they scoring by committee, and this tie alone has been a great example of that, but this season, you wouldn't just say two guys' names. You could just run through the whole midfield and say Ahmed and Vite and Berhalter in addition to White. And you could even throw Tata Jonsson and Sabi in there, like the performers that are really playing man of the match level, best 11 type of performances night and night again in the Champions Cup. It's a long list, man. So to Alex's point about the depth, that this is such an incredibly strong side. And you know, you guys been flying this flag for a while. And since we've done the show together over the last year, how they don't get enough credit. We obviously see that from MLS pundits. This team is so worth staying up late to watch. When they play early, please stop whatever you were going to do elsewhere and just watch them.
I think one of the things that also sets up the Whitecaps and Jesper Sorensen for success as well is not only the depth, but there is depth in a way that it's an easy, straightforward decision because you have two left backs that you can start. You have, center backs that you can plug in very easily. Bjorn and Uwe can go in there and fit into the system quite easily. You have different options on the wing, whether you're looking at a Nelson, an Ahmed, Daniel Rios, like maybe that's the one where you're trying to fit a bit of a circle in a square hole. But he has these options that just kind of fit within the system, which make his choices very easy. He has it laid out for him. There's none of this trying to fit players in where they don't necessarily fit, seeing if they can thrive in a different system and tweaking things like that. And it did seem like that is what Maestrano is trying to do with Miami. And they might not be the best example of it, but there's a lot of coaches that don't have the players to fit the system. And I think you have to go back to the comments that Schuster made when they fired Vanni Sartini, that they had the players. They just needed the coach to be able to put them in the right system. And clearly that's what they've gotten with Jesper Sorensen this season. And it's working so far for the Whitecaps. Who knows whether they can maintain it throughout 34-game season into MLS Cup, through the Canadian Championship and all that. Of course, 4 trophies up for grabs. There's not been a team that has done the quadruple, but it'll be interesting to see if the Whitecaps can and just how far they can go. But a question from Jermaine Pedro, dive into the Whitecaps tactics. We have done a little bit of that here. It seems like when they're in possession or on a break, they push the attacking 5 aggressively forward while keeping 5 back. And if one of the outside backs goes forward, then one of the center mids stays to cover. Am I seeing that right, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good assessment from Jermaine. That's why we got the NFP community. Love getting sort of questions.
I didn't see Jermaine questions. I'm only smiling there because that could have been a Simon Fudge question. He wasn't in the press conference with us the last couple of days.
That's it. It was good insight there. But no, I think for the Whitecaps attack, it has been very interesting to see the little subtle ways they try and create overloads. Basically, I think that's kind of the whole idea of the Jesper Sorensen system, right? That's kind of like Pep Guardiola. When you have possession, teams are going to sit back. You have to find ways to overload. And one big one for Sorensen has been just out wide. I think the one thing I've really found fascinating is how Pedro Vite has kind of been a key instigator, I guess you can say. If you watch me, always drifts out to a side, helps create that overload. And then another thing that I've seen a lot of is the Whitecaps do a great job of crashing the box with a lot of numbers. Watch a lot of White's headers because he's been getting a lot. It's by design, because often when Rios is out there, Rios is crashing with them. If, whoever the other winger is, if it's natural winger, is crashing the box with them. You saw it with in the first leg. Like White makes a great run in the box, but there was also a runner beyond him that kind of opened up the space. Another thing that I've loved as well is that the Whitecaps, they do a great job of cutting back, of being patient. The first goal with Ben and I, we almost saw it play out in slow motion. It was actually really cool because it was like, boom, Ali Ahmed cuts inside, something he does a lot as well to support. Great run in behind. Miami doesn't track it. Ahmed plays the ball. Berhalter is the one who gets it. He looks up. Miami's already in panic mode. Their line drops back. White fakes like he's going to go near post, drops back before Berhalter even had left the ball had left his foot. I said to Ben, it's like, it's a goal. I see the way White dropped into that space. It was happening. Boom, scores. The movement in the final third is a big one, and that starts from the back, the way they shift to a back three, the way their wing backs push forward and stretch the field, and then, of course, their midfielders also do a great job. So a lot of things on the ball to do well, and then, of course, defensively, there's a lot going on there too.
I was 3 or 4 seats over from you, and I feel like I could hear you say goal, but also the people in between us, it was like a telephone. Like they all said goal. And it was almost as if you were warning anyone who was like writing part of their story or tweeting, please look up, like a goal is coming. So I love how that echoed down the line.
Yeah, there was they had all the Whitecaps media together, and it was quite interesting because Luis Suarez missed a big chance late in the game, and we were chit-chatting amongst ourselves, all of us, no cheering in the press box. Then a certain Whitecaps reporter goes, "Oh my God, he's missed!" and then says, "Oh, I said that a little bit too loudly." Got a bunch of eyes from the Miami press corps, which was quite funny. But the crowd was quite quiet, it seemed, not totally involved. And that's the question for Mayan Zilberstein. What do you make of the Miami crowd? And did they know, do you think, that it was a semifinal and that there was all this on the line, Brendan?
That's a good point. Mayan is the best one of us to answer that question, though. He was in the stands, albeit he was, in the corner. They do this intentionally to give the visiting supporters, the traveling support, the worst seats. But the worst seats for atmosphere judgment are the press box behind glass, because you really can't capture it. I know this is something that Manuel Veth has talked about a lot and talked about with us that night. And if you see Europe or the World Cup, even in Qatar, they take seats that are at the halfway line and make that the press seat outside. It's supposed to be outside, and you really lose that when you're behind glass. And at least it wasn't as bad as BMO, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, it was hard to hear, but to that point, I think this does lead to a very interesting discussion that's going to come about. It definitely it feels like Inter Miami is kind of wasting the potential of what they have here with Lionel Messi and all these big stars. And I just think their decisions continue to show that, right? Like just their squad building, even just you can see the vibe. It's so weird because in a sense, it should be extremely exciting that South Florida, the greatest player to lace up his boots and play the game, is out here on a regular basis and the crowd's not full. And you go around, there's just not a buzz about what's going on with this Inter Miami team. And that doesn't help when, for fans who have been dedicated and have stuck in, the true MLS sickos, the players that were so fun to watch in the first few years have been traded away. And it feels like they've just been discarded. And like any sense of continuity has just been thrown out because these stars are here. And I can't help but think when Jesper Sorensen calls it a circus, it really has become that in a certain way. Like it's fitting because you joke about it, but okay, it was cool to see the circus come to town, to see it on the other side. But for us to be there at Chase Stadium, you realize like, oh, the circus goes the other way, and that's not good. Like something like this, it should be a bit more. If it's going to be a circus, you want more Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas residency type beat, where it's it's something entertaining, it's something you travel to, it's sustainable, it's beautiful. And it just feels like it's maybe it's the temporary stadium, but it just feels like there's a whole like performer way past his prime, no half empty seats, etc. That vibe about it. And I think what Miami's done to build it, you really do wonder. And there was a very interesting question, like, what does this look like when Messi leaves? And from a Miami perspective, I'd have to be genuinely worried that what they're doing is just going to lead to an absolute disaster when he does leave, because he's the one kind of propping it up and making it look way better than it is.
I mean, having a stadium in the city and to get, I think, a different population than Broward County, you could potentially build a real fan base. But baseball feels like something that should be big in Florida. Obviously, it's big for spring training. The weather's great all the time. The Marlins are the smallest market team in Major League Baseball. it is very difficult in that market to run a consistently revenue generating sports franchise. It's why MLS didn't come back there for a long time. It's why it was away for a long time. The only way for it to get to this profitable level was to have superstars involved, which started with David Beckham, and then the superstars that they purchased in the lead up to building this into a brand that Messi would want to come to. I still think it's remarkable that Messi plays in that stadium, which is shocking. They'll build a new place. They'll call it the place that Messi built. But when he leaves, they'll be lucky to get Robert Taylor back to finish Messi. I don't think that would be, I think that would be a stretch for them. And also, I didn't think I would expect to say that last night. That, man, if only they had the Finnish Messi to the Finnish Neymar to come off the bench, maybe Miami could get in this game against Vancouver.
Yeah, I will say that their supporter section was quite loud and vibrant, and it looked like a vibe throughout the night. But the general fan looked pretty out of it, and there wasn't much of a vibe outside of that. A lot
of Messi kids,
to
be expected.
And the introduction, and maybe Brendan, you can comment on this quickly as somebody that's hyped up a crowd before. When they were reading out the starting lineup, it was the regular announcements, and then it was giving the Messi praise, the Messi from the PA and the hype man in the stadium, which Alex and I were chuckling at in the stands because it just seemed like very, for lack of a better word, glazing of Messi for the home side.
Yeah, like it felt manufactured or fake, or like
very
it should have been more. You wanted
very
fireworks, and
it's a football club. Like it's it's just, I always think of parallels. Like just imagine you're at a Whitecaps game and they're announcing everyone, and then it's like, and your captain Ryan Gold, and it's like they start singing a song, and then fireworks came on, like just because that's what happened. It was like the song, there was fireworks that came on for Messi's name. It was very, very weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that if you're the Whitecaps, I think there's a part of me that feels like, wouldn't you want to be at that point with a player that like everyone goes nuts for? That is the fireworks worthy hype player, hype machine.
That stuff happens.
I'm kind of torn.
That stuff happens organically. I went and saw Lionel Messi at the Canu in 2019, and you don't have to, like, it's very clear how important he is to that club. And granted, this is again a very historic institution, a club that's been around long before Lionel Messi, and that will be around long after, with stars before and after, as we're seeing now with Lamine Yamal. Like, if they just did a great job of, it was Barcelona. You're going to watch Barcelona. Messi's a key part of that. The fans know when he does magic, they chant, they stand up, they sing. But yeah, there's a certain element of it with Miami that felt very, very fake. And I think that's where it lines in, because it should be all about the club. It should be all about growing the club. With Barcelona, Messi is left and they're still filling the stadiums. They're still winning trophies. When Messi's left, are all those Messi shirts going to come back? Like, are they? Like, that's a genuine question they're going to have to be answered.
Yeah. That's the unique thing about MLS, though, right? And you look at some of the big clubs from the early years who would love to get back to that level. The New England Revolution, DC United. I think that's what's unique to MLS, where it has grown this much since 2007 because of a player. And it has continued to grow because of players in certain markets. And we see teams like the Chicago Fire made Xherdan Shaqiri the highest paid player in the league, because it's a player that keeps you at the top of the sports section, or top of relevancy in a very crowded sports market in most of these places. And that's just where it's at. I think what's unique, what a great case study will be for this Miami project when it eventually crumbles, be it at the end of this season, or if they get one more season out of Messi and bring some new friends, is what is the in-between balance? Because Toronto FC are actually a good part of this case study. Without Insigne, you don't get Bernardeschi. But could they have just got Bernardeschi? Because they got Sebastian Giovinco before, and we kind of saw how that worked. As you assembled a roster around a player of that caliber who comes at that age, we weren't talking about it being a retirement league. Yes, there were people saying that Seba Giovinco came for the money, but I think that there'll be an adjustment to what that new model is, where it's not just unknown South Americans, and it's not just catering to one corner of your community and rallying up one fan base. There does have to be a balance, and just going for old big name stars and their friends is not the winning recipe.
Well, so just to hop in, last point for me on this, not to drag this out, but I think we've already seen that transition. It's LAFC and it's the Columbus Crew. Those two teams have built deep, sustainable roster with great players across the board with stars. But you go to LAFC, Denny Bouanga is not plastered all over everywhere, and his face is everywhere. Ditto with Giroud or Lloris, and heck, Giroud isn't even an important part of LAFC. You went to Columbus when they won all those trophies with Cucho Hernandez. Same thing. They had a deep roster. They had stars. I think that's the big thing in MLS. It's beyond. I think for a lot of teams, the vanity project, and I think teams are realizing it. Because Chicago with Shaqiri was a great example. That flopped. How many of these success stories have flopped? TFC. And the reality is, in all of those cases, is because they went for the 2007 approach. Bring in a star, the rest will follow. No, I think this is a good sign of how competitive the league is. And I think that's where the Whitecaps have done so well to step up, because they've gone and built the team instead of chased the stars. And that's led them to this position.
I think what we're also learning in MLS these days is you build the roster first and then the big star, whether that's an aging one, whether that's, a prospect that you can build up, a highly rated U22 player, that can be the finishing piece, the piece that turns you from a good team into a contender. I look at a team, like the Columbus Crew, for example. They've brought in those finishing pieces over their time under Wilfred Nancy, and that's elevated them to MLS Cup, Leagues Cup, making the Champions Cup final last year. I think of what the Chicago Fire might do this offseason or this summer, because they have two very good players and a very good attack, but they're missing a secondary striker, and that's what Hugo Kuipers needs. And maybe they do bring in, a Jamie Vardy, a Thomas Muller. I wrote about those two names over on Sports Illustrated. That it'll be interesting to see whether those kind of players that could have been that key piece to kind of make the difference before the Jermaine Defoes of the world are actually the final piece, not the starting piece now, Brendan.
Jamie Vardy is in a different spot, I think, in that assessment, though, right? Because he is someone like a Giroud, where, yes, you could put the poster up or not put the poster up, but he's unlikely to be as important a driving force. And he might put the ball in the back of the net. Robbie Keane did that for the Galaxy longer than I think a lot of people expected, kind of carry that team. But I think MLS has passed that where you wouldn't want that. What I'm interested to see, and what the hot rumor has been as we record tonight on Thursday evening, is that Greg Berhalter's Chicago Fire are in the lead to get Kevin De Bruyne. And in Chicago, at that stadium, I think that's an interesting one, because that's still someone that I think can contribute more, has more in the tank than Messi at this point in his career, but not someone that's as big of a general draw. But I think a draw of enough in a city like that, that's a little bit more than Bastian Schweinsteiger when they grabbed him, to be able to, as you say, build the team around some very notable players and a couple of very talented players, but guys that have a lot left in the tank and can contribute to a project for a little bit.
And it'll certainly be interesting to see where MLS goes. We've seen the different eras, but the Whitecaps in their era right now, they're getting through the Concacaf Champions Cup final for the first time in their history. 3 Canadian teams, each one of the MLS teams making the Champions Cup final, Champions League final in the last 10 years, which is pretty remarkable when you think of Canada on the global soccer stage as well. But that's all we've got for episode 228, the Whitecaps post-match show, and a bit of MLS talk here on Northern Futbol. We'll be back next time. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we're on the YouTube channel on the 90th minute as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next time.